Hey guys, it is MissSimReno. If you are returning to the channel, welcome back. And if you're brand new, I'm very excited that you decided to join me here today for another speed build. And happy Monday. I should probably say that more. Happy Monday. It's the start of a new week. That could go one of two ways, I feel, but hopefully it is going to be a good week for you. So far, my week has started off lovely. And today we are actually going to be building a converted barn loft. And I am so very excited about this because one, it is very autumnal. I love me some fall, and I'm finally starting to really get into some fall builds. And two, this was actually kind of sparked over on my Discord. Someone had mentioned like a converted barn, like a loft or something like that. And I really loved that idea. And I actually wanted to make it not only a converted barn loft residential space, but I wanted it to also be a bit of a farm. So I was on Pinterest and I was looking for, how did I phrase it? I think I phrased it as farm layouts or like farm organization, because I wanted to create the farm in an organized fashion. I really don't know how else to describe it, but I didn't just want it to be like pure chaos. I wanted there to be almost a little bit of a grid, like certain areas were for certain crops and this space over here was for this, like that kind of thing. And I worked on a smaller lot in Windenburg here. This is the Rustic Residence, I believe. It actually looked a lot bigger when I first loaded up the lot, and after I ended up building the barn, I was like, wow, I don't have as much space as I thought, but I still made it work, and I actually really like the size of it because when I was on Pinterest, I saw the concept of micro farming, and I had never heard of this before, so I was really interested, and what I gathered from it is that it's for those who do want to do a level of farming, be a little bit more self-sufficient, and it allows you to essentially maximize like a small amount of space with particular crops and setups and stuff like that. So I thought it was like the coolest thing on the face of the planet, and that is pretty much what inspired the rest of this build and how it was set up and all that fun stuff. So as you can see, I'm working on some of the landscaping here because I did want to use some plants that looked a little bit more dead, I suppose. Not like full-on winter, everything's dormant and dying. I just mean like fall, so there's some yellow colors, the greens aren't as like vibrant, like that kind of thing. And a lot of plants that were in the debug menu for Get Together, because that's what gave us Windenburg. Wow, I had to think about that. A lot of those plants actually worked really nicely. However, I also used a fair amount of like base game plants and whatnot as well. So it was really fun. It was a good mix. I used those little like path stepping stones as well to flesh out a little tiny path to this. I suppose we're just going to call this a shed. I originally wanted it to be a functional shed. However, I ended up just leaving it as a non-functional shed. At one point, I was thinking it was going to be an outhouse because you guys will see when I get onto the interior, but I actually forget to make a bathroom at first. And that was a little embarrassing because I was like, I need a bathroom. Like, this is not up for debate. However, I ended up being able to fit one inside. So I turned this shed back into a shed that just had a few like gardening decorative items more so. And I was able to use so many plants in this build, which was so fun. Any opportunity I get to use a ton of different plants and like flowers is definitely an opportunity I want to take advantage of. But as you can see, I am fleshing out even more of the landscaping, and I was able to use a lot of cool objects for this build as well. So you can see the stack of crates to the left-hand side. I believe those are from cats and dogs. And then the stacked barrels with the little bucket and the lantern is actually a prop decoration from Get Famous. So it was really cool to use some of these items. I didn't want this to look like an older farm. Like I feel like a lot of those items from a Get Famous could work for like an old Western farm, like a saloon, because we have that, I believe, stage set up, and also like medieval stuff. So I didn't really want to give off that vibe, but I just wanted it to look as though it would belong on some kind of farm, if that just makes any sense. And as you can see as well, I used two archways and some of those doors from Cats and Dogs to make like this big open barn door. And I end up off camera placing a sliding glass door from Eco Lifestyle. So I did that because basically if you just had open archways all the time, I feel like one, the lighting would be a little bit awkward at times, and with seasons, I don't know if that would have an impact. So I wanted to make sure that if it was, you know, snowing in Windenburg, which it definitely will, that there was at least the ability to like close a door since I used those other doors as like faux open doors. Let me see how many times I can say doors in one sentence. Anyway, I am wrapping up some of the landscaping here, and then I move on to some of the other corners of the lot because I don't know, I always have this need to like frame things in the center of a lot. I don't know where it comes from. I'm probably a little bit OCD about it. I always have to like balance things out in my brain, but I ended up doing that and then trying to section off a few areas with some of this, what I consider like garden soil terrain paint. And I wanted each section, like I mentioned, to be maybe a different crop. And since I wanted to make this more of an autumnal build, I ended up planting some crops that would only grow in the fall. And so when you do see the screenshots and you kind of see me working within this build, you will notice that they are not very colorful. And that is because in the fall, a lot of them do get a bit, I don't know, less vibrant, right? Things are starting to kind of die a little tiny bit as you near winter, but I did actually go through and plant a ton of different crops, including, I think, grapes, carrots, green beans, apple trees, and there's like one other that I can't remember, but it was so hard. I had to actually look up like a season's gardening guide on the interwebs and try to find out which crops were seasonal with fall because I have no freaking clue. I almost forget, like more often than not, I actually forget that seasons introduced that kind of system, like it kind of enhanced the gardening system. So I had to look it up. And over here, I end up putting a picnic table, but I do take it out and I change it up a few different times. But this is where the little bee boxes go. So there are 3 of them. And then I put just some like cluttered buckets from the debug menu from Outdoor Retreat as either like honey collection or water or something. Just, I wanted to add some elements to this. And I also took out this fencing from Outdoor Retreat, again from the debug menu, to kind of fence off some of these different gardening plots. I actually end up making an adjustment as well. I think I do it off camera because, to be honest, this build actually took a really long time. This video is roughly like 20 minutes, but I think it took 4 to 6 hours to actually do all of this, if not more, just because I changed my mind so often and I wanted it to not only be functional, but I wanted it to look really nice. And sometimes it's hard to kind of hit the happy medium with those because sometimes you make things that look incredible but like they're not functional or whatever the case may be. So I do end up mixing this up a little bit. I'm kind of playing around with the fencing right now to see what other styles and layouts I can do for these gardening plots, because in the back here I make, well, I can't say a barn, but it's like a little like lean-to almost, because it is open. There's no like doors to it or anything. And I split it into 2 sections. One side has just some debug hay bales because I thought that that would be really cute. And then the other, I think, has a juice fizzing machine, or station I should say, as well as a flower arranging station and like stacks of gardening plots and just a whole other mess of things that would be kind of like related to farming or just some outdoor activities, because I thought that was kind of nice. I wanted there to be more activities than just gardening here, because gardening, 1, takes a lot out of your Sims, and 2, it can get a little boring just watching your Sims like walk around and tend to all the plants. So I wanted to make sure there were a few other things. And you did just see me go into the gallery and pull out a room that I made. This is, I think, farm stuff number 1. I made 2 rooms a couple weeks ago just because I was looking for farm stuff and I was getting annoyed that I couldn't find it easily. So I spent the time and actually went through and made 2 rooms called Farm Stuff 1 and Farm Stuff 2, and I uploaded them to the gallery. So I pulled out one of those, and that's what gave me the hay bales and a few other things such as the lights that I merged into the side of this building. And I actually ended up using a flooring that I've never used too. I think it's kind of like wood chips is what it looks like. I don't even remember the name of it at this point, but I believe it is base game. So that was actually kind of nice because I thought it fit with the interior of this little like lean-to workshop area. And now I'm stacking up a couple of gardening plots, so of course you can't use those unless you remove them, but I liked how it looked. And then I pull out the scarecrow because I wanted it to be autumnal. I was thinking like a pumpkin patch at first, but I ended up deciding against that. But I love the scarecrow so much. I end up moving him actually a little bit because he's kind of like in the center of the garden right now, and when I lay out all of the crops, there was not room for the scarecrow. I didn't realize how much room the crops actually really take up, and you can kind of place them in lines, those seeds, and have your sim plant them, which is what I did. But if there isn't room for that seed or that plant where you placed it initially, like your sim will plant it and then it'll move. So I actually had to do a lot of finagling with the plants and how they were lined up and everything like that, which resulted in me having to move the scarecrow. That's what I'm trying to say. And then over here to the side of the barn, I placed a bunch of bug boxes. A bunch meaning 3, because I only placed down 3 because we can only have 3 different kinds of bugs in those boxes. I think it's like crickets, grubs, and something else, beetles. That's what it is. And they all produce different kinds of like fuel, I want to say, as well as things that your sims can make. Like they can cook food with the different produce from those bugs. I haven't played around with it too much, so I honestly am not really that sure. But when I went and play tested this, I did kind of play around with the bug boxes just a little bit. I got it to the point where they each produced their own like thing, whatever it is they do produce. And I think my sim was able to cook like 2 specific meals, and then he was able to extract something else from one of the other ones that he could use maybe as fertilizer or whatever. I'm really not quite sure. I really have to play with it a little bit more because it's not something that I was necessarily attracted to as a player. It wasn't really my thing, but I'll have to play with it more just to understand it a little bit better. And I was a bit unsure about this covered section off to the side, only because it looked a little awkward coming off of the barn, but at the same time, I was thinking since this barn was converted into a residential space, that maybe they added on that little addition so they could have a little bit more covered workspace. So I had some of these shelves here that we got with Eco Lifestyle, as well as I think only one vertical garden. I ditched one of them just because I didn't have a lot of room. And I think I put a woodworking bench as well and a bicycle. Just as many outdoor activities as you could possibly think of, I tried to fit in here. And I wasn't thinking like a sprinkler. Oh, wait. Oh, I should have used a sprinkler. I should have put a sprinkler like in the middle of the garden. That would have been realistic. It wouldn't have necessarily been functional because your Sims, I think, have to water the plants, but man, that actually would have been a good idea, and I already uploaded this to the gallery as this video went up, so that's a bummer. Put a sprinkler in there if you think that's a good idea. But as you can see, I'm also trying to figure out the window situation because I started to place objects kind of willy-nilly without thinking of the windows inside, but I was able to make it work, and now we are onto the interior, which the second floor is just the loft, and the first floor is just one giant open floor plan, which I really loved. I didn't do the quote-unquote floor planning on camera because honestly there wasn't much to do whatsoever. There was like nothing to do for the floor plan, but I really love this barn. Like, I wish I could live here. I think it would be the coolest thing on the face of the planet. The only challenge I encountered was initially the ladder because since I wanted it to be lofted, I figured a ladder would make sense just to save some space, but it was kind of like right in the middle of the downstairs, so I had to work the floor plan around the ladder, and I actually ended up figuring it out fairly quickly, so that level of stress dropped right back down, which was great. And the first thing I do is try to work on the living room space, and I love this living room because it is so cozy. I was able to use my favorite fireplace from Cats and Dogs, at least I think it's from Cats and Dogs. Yeah, it's from Cats and Dogs. I had to think about it for a second. And I just used like some mismatched furniture, and I was able to use this coffee table from Seasons, which is usually pretty rare, but I did size it down once, and that's typically why I don't use it, is because I think it's like that one, the 2 from Eco Lifestyle, and there's one more maybe from Parenthood. They're just so big, and you can't use them anywhere, especially in smaller living spaces. So I always have to size them down at least 1. But then what you have to do is you have to use the OMSP shelf to clutter it appropriately, because anything that you place on top of it will clip to its original height, if that makes sense. So it's kind of a pain. I don't think I actually put any clutter on this coffee table, and that's rare for me. 1, I think I actually forgot, and then 2, once I did forget and I looked back on it, I realized that I didn't want anything on it. I resisted the urge to clutter, which is so unlike me, but I think I mainly did it because of these bookcases that I used. They're from Discover University, and they look pretty cluttery and disheveled as is, so I thought that that element of clutter was strong enough to satisfy that need in me, which makes me laugh. Like, I need things to be cluttered, but clutter also gives me anxiety in real life, so I don't really understand it. But then I work on the dining section, which is right on the other side of the half wall, which ends up being where the kitchen is. and I adored using everything from cats and dogs for that dining room, the table and the chairs, and I used the darker wood swatch of those chairs with the gray kind of wicker seats, and I really like it. I don't think I've used those very often, at least in that swatch. So that was really nice. And then there's a side table over here with just a couple of clutter items. I think I do change it up just a little bit here and there, and as you can see, I just went and put something outside, and now all of a sudden outside has like tons of plants and things. It's because I did it off camera because it took so long to like grow them. I literally had to do in-game time to grow them. I think it took 5 days in game with entering the season of fall for everything to grow to a point that I liked it. So there was like a little bit of a gap between finishing the interior and planting everything and having it grow appropriately. It was kind of crazy. I don't think I've ever put that level of dedication into a build before, but there are people that do that for like almost every single build, and I applaud you because it was kind of a pain. I really just wanted to like take my screenshots and start compiling the video. I don't have the patience usually for stuff like that, so I was actually really surprised with myself. But as you can see, the dining room is pretty much together at this point. I loved using those leaves that were kind of like centerpieces from Seasons. And then I put the 3 candles in the center of them. I thought it looked so beautiful. Like I would love that as a centerpiece. And here I have a shelf, and I just put a couple of more clutter items on top of it because I think storage is probably a little bit of an issue in this converted loft, but hopefully, you know, this person or this sim doesn't have too many things that really need to be stowed away. And then I end up working on the kitchen, and I used the industrial countertops as well as kind of like the older, like off the grid looking, well, it is off the grid functional, but like the older looking refrigerator, and I don't even remember what it's called, but it looks like an older one. I think it's like made out of metal and stuff. I don't know why I'm even guessing, but I really liked the kitchen, and it was actually more spacious than I was anticipating. And what I end up doing after I kind of coordinate everything in the kitchen is I put a table in the center with a chair, but the chair is a little bit offset, so you can't actually sit in the chair at the table, but I thought it was really cute because it kind of looked like a little faux island in the middle. I've been doing that a little bit more lately. I haven't done that really before, but I've really been enjoying it now because the island counters are just so big. No matter what countertop it is, the islands are huge. But I ended up making it work, and I hope that it kind of works for you guys, at least for like the look, because I really liked how it looked, and it didn't impede my Sims' ability to make anything in the kitchen, so they could use the countertops and the stove and everything. I even tested the stove with having put that kettle on top of it, which I always forget about. Like, hello, I always forget that we do have a kettle. Like, it's not functional, but we do have one. It came with base game, and I think it's actually considered part of the industrial, what am I trying to say? Like the line of items that we got with base game, if we can say that. I don't know. I've talked about this tons of times, but there's like maybe 3 distinct styles that you can achieve with base game. And actually industrial is one of them. So maybe there's 4. Maybe I kind of missed one a little bit. But anyway, here's the table that I was mentioning. And I do place this chair a little bit at an angle just to make it look like it's kind of like a leftover from the dining set. And even though there is a flower right in the center, maybe that's where this single sim enjoys their coffee in the morning or their breakfast instead of sitting at the dining table. Maybe that's mainly for when they have company over. And now I'm working on the bathroom, which is nothing special whatsoever. There is kind of like the do-it-yourself off-the-grid toilet, which the slot is not meant to be off the grid, by the way, so that wasn't really my goal, but a lot of those kinds of objects seemed to fit with the style that I was going for. And they just have the open shower as well. It really is nothing fancy, and I don't even think I was able to put a sink in that bathroom. And since it's only 1 sim living here, maybe 2, I didn't think it was a huge deal. I mean, when you have someone living in a converted barn loft, it's probably going to have a little bit of an unusual layout, right? Like it's not going to be perfect. But now we're working on the bedroom, which is in the lofted area. And I use this bed from Cats and Dogs, but I do swap it to the other side so the window's kind of on a side of the bed. I end up putting a dresser, and then there's also a little tiny console table, and I mount a small TV on the wall so they do at least have some other form of entertainment aside from being out in the garden or being downstairs doing something. I think I also give them a knitting basket too, so maybe the Sim's a little crafty. I don't know, I imagine the Sim living here is pretty self-sufficient. They still enjoy some modern amenities, but they also really enjoy doing outdoor activities and maybe creating their own things every now and then, whatever that ends up meaning for them. There's also a chess table outside, and then I just decorate this little console table, and we are almost at the end of the build. So I really hope that you guys enjoyed this one. I'm excited for more fall inspired builds coming very, very soon, and I will catch you guys next time I post a video, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye!